Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Walking Dead. So in this episode, obviously, Rick shows up at the hilltop, and Daryl tries to talk to him. Daryl, tries to kind of like make sure that Rick is okay, to the point like, no, I'll go out with you. But Rick is like, no, I'll do it myself. I'm going to be okay. And it also brings up the question, like, even Maggie's asking Rosita, it's like, will he be okay? It's like, and Rosita's like, are you okay? After everything with Glenn, and it's like, I don't know. She's like, she says she won't be okay until Negan is dead. And even Rosita's like, yeah, but previously to that, it was like, once it gets quiet, that's when like it'll kind of start hitting them, because at least it hurts now, but it's gonna hurt worse when you have nothing to focus your anger on. Like the moment they say they'll be okay with the quiet afterwards once Negan is dead, but even then it's like it won't change the fact as of what you lost. Even for Rick, for Rosita, for Carl, it won't. I mean, for Rosita, Maggie, or Rick, it won't change any of that. The people they've lost, and there's no getting them back, no matter, even if they get their revenge or whatever, even if they take out Negan. But I guess the same thought could be like, taking out Negan means saving other people. So what caught me by surprise is the fact that we see Rick, well, it shouldn't be too shocking, but Rick goes off on his own to try and take down Negan, and he kind of gets Negan by himself. It was kind of interesting, because now we have Negan learning about the whole Jada situation, so now he knows Simon lied to him. He even tried changing up things, so it's kind of interesting. It's hard to say whether he like truly believes himself, or was that just a last ditch effort? Because he's like, all right, fine, I'll let everything bygones be bygones in the name of your son, because I really liked him. Fine, you get the three communities, the Kingdom, Hilltop, and Alexandria, all under my control. I'll drop it down, so you don't even have to give me half your stuff. You just got to give me 25%. That's a good. I'm like, I don't know what. Like, it's hard to say which side of that was. Was that him being like, no, I'm still in control, trying to act like he was, or was it just out of like, man, I don't want to die, because he knows Rick is that close to killing him? Especially when he lost Lucille and Rick picked up, I was like, yo, because to me, I think that's ultimate. It didn't go down this episode, but I think ultimately, I've said it since like last season, I think that's how Negan is going to die. Like, Rick is going to take Lucille to him like he did Abraham and Glenn and so many before, so that's always been my thought process, because subsequently since then, he is not, and I always threw that out there, it's almost kind of a scare thing. It was like, I don't know if in the comic books he does that a lot, like after Glenn or not, but like in this show, he has subsequently not done that since like season 7's premiere. He has not. I mean, to walkers maybe, but not to like anyone in particular. So it's just, to me, it was like a scare tactic where we see him swinging around Lucille. You're always going to be jumpy because you don't know what he's going to do. I mean, to be fair, obviously, as we've seen, he does knives too. So that's a conversation all in itself. But it is interesting, because the moment like Rick started burning Lucille, it started pissing Negan off. I mean, Negan's talked about his life a little bit in the past when he was talking to Gabriel earlier this season, so I can only assume Lucille's got to be named after someone. Also, I love the fact that he's driving in the car, he's got Lucille in the passenger seat sitting in a bucket of blood. He's just like, you look beautiful. I'm like, it just shows you how weird and crazy Negan is. But fortunately for him, he got away from Rick, which kind of figured I figured as much. I was like, I ain't no way it's going to go down like that. Like, Negan's too slippery to kind of take it, out like that. Like, it's going to be something more big. It's going to be more of a spectacle when his time finally comes, if it comes. I would assume it's going to come, but we'll have to wait and see. All the while, you have Simon slowly planning, because you see him kind of talk to Dwight about it, which Dwight's not kind of giving him the response. But for Simon, what really pisses him off about the situation, he's kind of made it abundantly clear before, it's like, they're not learning. Cut our losses, kill them, and move on to find out more other people who will be a lot more willing to kind of bend down and bow down to us. Because Simon even kind of talks to Dwight about it. It's like, oh, haven't you ever thought about knocking Negan off? And he's like, oh yeah, the man who took my wife and burned my face. No, I never thought about it once. And he's like, well, you see what I mean? You let all that go to serve him. You did it for survival. It's like, we should be doing the same thing. But Negan because these people are not going to scare. They're going to keep getting back up and you're going to fight. But Negan keeps giving them chances over and over again because Negan, in his own weird twisted way, does care about people because he thinks, people are the number one resources. People cannot be replaced. Hence why he's super hurt about this whole Carl thing, because it's like, that kid has so much potential. I really liked him. I really thought he would survive this world, So basically they make it so like, well, I'm lucky for them. They didn't confirm it that Negan is dead. They were just like, we didn't find Negan, we found blood, but it's like, hey, we are Negan and we're going to go through his plan. But the fact of the matter is, now let's change it up. Like Negan was all about about scaring them as like, we can't do that anymore. And basically riling them up and kind of basically taking leadership, which I guess it makes you wonder, has he always been thinking that in the back of his mind and he's just taking this as an opportunity to do it? To be fair, it's that situation of well, they're all supposed to be Negan. So it's like, even if the big man's not there, we carry on the torch. Even if you kill one of us, we were all Negan. There will always be another Negan that's going to rise up, So, I was kind of cute. I was halfway expecting Negan to pop up and it's like, Simon, oh buddy, and then putting him down because he knows about the Jadis situation. So it's kind of interesting because you have Dwight standing there, and I'm curious to see what Dwight does because obviously Negan's out of the picture, at least for now. So the question is, what would Dwight do? Because Negan being out of the picture was kind of his biggest concern. I mean, still there's a whole Eugene knowing that he's the traitor, plus there's a whole Laura situation. Wherever she is, she still has a part to play in this. I thought she was going to be the one at the end with Negan, and it's like, oh man, now Negan knows not only about Simon's betrayal, but also Dwight. But it's like, lo and behold, who is it? Freaking Jadis. It's like, holy crap. So I'm curious to see what goes down there, because he'll probably try and talk his way out of it, being like, hey, I didn't have anything to do with that. That was 100% Simon. I'm curious to see what goes down with that, because it's like, now it's probably going to be a situation where, and it kind of fits the episode too, because the whole episode also deals with Maggie meeting that Georgie lady. It's like, hey, you give us supplies, you give us some food and some music, and we will hook you up with the key to the future. And it turns out, that information ended up being knowledge. So basically, it kind of fits into what Carl wanted. It's like you basically trusting people a little bit more, and good things will kind of come about. It's not a situation of just you get lucky and everything works out. It's not that. It's just kind of you do some good. You kind of God, what would be the perfect phrasing for it? You pass it forward and it kind of comes back to you in a different way. It's almost kind of like a karma thing. Now, the thing is, Rick left Jadis. This is the point I'm trying to make. He left Jadis, and now she's with Negan. Who's to say Negan doesn't convince her to kind of I know what happened to your people. It's I want you to come back and be my number two. Jadis will do that because Rick left her. If Rick had brought her along, maybe this storyline would be different. Maybe you wouldn't have to worry about Negan have gotten away. The reason why this happened is because you left Jadis. If you hadn't left her, there would have been no one here to save Negan. So you kind of screwed yourself over, and you potentially created a future enemy, because it kind of fits with what Carl did. Carl saved someone, and now because he saved Sadiq, now they have a doctor. Obviously, there's a whole situation with Doc last episode with Gabriel, so there's that whole situation. So there's give and take to this world, and I appreciate they're kind of doing it in the story too, where it's kind of oh yeah, you have this thing heading in one direction, not realizing that it's taking Sadiq and stuff. It's oh, they got a doctor, while at the same time they lost their other doctor, which Gabriel thought oh man, I failed. I thought this was what God wanted me to do. It's just kind of I don't know. It's just one of those things of don't just wait for things to kind of get well. You kind of have to do your own part too. It's kind of the whole situation. So I'm curious to see what happens on that front. But also, it brought up some interesting things, especially because obviously the one that was pushing for making a deal was Michonne. But Maggie had her reservations. Obviously, Enid had her reservations. Because what ended up bothering Enid the most about it is kind of it's there's a whole Oceanside situation for her. She ended up killing their leader, and it's oh look, I'm alive. Carl goes out and saves someone, and he's dead. It's what do I do with that? And it's it's kind of what Carl had said before. It's do we give up fighting? She's no. Michonne's Carl didn't want us to give up fight. We still have to fight the saviors, but we have to find something beyond that. We have to fighting can't be all that we have. There has to be more, which the knowledge that she got from Georgie, that Maggie ended up getting from Georgie because she made the deal. Because for her, it's Carl did what he did because he was trying to be the person his dad always wanted him to be. It's like, we should be the people that Carl wants us to be, to handle this thing the right way. So obviously, like I said, it's interesting too, because going about the story, it's like you have Michonne kind of going more towards where Carl wants the rest of them to, while you also have Rick, because of his distraught, because of his sadness and his anger, he's kind of going like the other side of the spectrum, going away from what Carl really wants, being so focused on revenge. So I think, like I said, I think it's a very smart way that they're handling it. And when you kind of look at things like that, it's like, oh, it's a very interesting way that they're kind of taking a lot of that contextual stuff and kind of like layering it onto the story like that in these different like views from different characters, kind of like, dealing with this whole Carl situation in their own ways and dealing with how to handle the future. But like the knowledge they ended up getting from Georgie is like, oh yeah, this is like medieval stuff, kind of teaching you like, oh yeah, without all like the civilization of like how to build like aqueducts and windmills and stuff like that, kind of building a future, building a home, so. Which even Georgie's like, I will be back, for full crates, because she gave them food too, because it's like, I know your people are having it rough, but it's like, that's very interesting, because it does beg the question, like, how did you survive this long? Because that was Enid's problem. It's like, you can't just live, just kind of wait, hoping things will go their way. It's like, no, I guess, because in this world, it is a situation of we have lost our ability to trust, To be fair, it's like Jada screwed Rick over way too many times, so it's like, I'm sorry that you got screwed over, but that's on you. You should have helped us when you had a chance. And now that she's no longer useful, now Rick wanted to throw her to the wolves. But the fact of the matter is, like, it doesn't matter about that. Like, you have to kind of let a lot of that go. It's kind of the whole point, like I said. Hence why Jadis will most likely turn into an enemy in the future. So we'll ultimately see. Like I said, we'll also have to see what goes down with Dwight too. I'm very interested to see, will we see a lot of Georgie's group or not? Like I said, it seems like they're pretty legit, pretty good. So it's kind of one of those things of like, don't lose faith in people. Like, this world has kind of brought the worst out of people. Don't just assume the worst in people. There are people out there you can trust. It's just been such a long time, and because they've been so caught up in their own war, it's the whole situation why like Rick left Sadiq before, because it's like, no, he'll take care of himself. I shot above him. But it's like, no, like our whole point was meeting up with people, asking the questions, but Rick was so caught up in the war and everything, he didn't bother. It's like, this is where we started at. This is the person you wanted me to be, and now I'm seeing you slowly drift away from the person you wanted me to be. So that's a hard aspect of about it, because it's like, if Carl was around, maybe things would be different. But it's like, now Rick doesn't have him being there, and it's just kind of like he's got Carl's death on his hands, and he's just kind of like, it's my boy, he's gone, and it's hard to kind of listen to those words when you're just fueled by rage and anger, So I don't know, all across the board, it's just very interesting what they're doing. I am curious to see what goes down with Simon. He's going to be obviously the leading force behind all of this stuff. I am still halfway expecting Laura to come back at any point in time and kind of expose Dwight, but we'll have to see. And also, what does Jadis have in mind for Negan? I mean, because this is a type of situation where she could just run away. I mean, like Simon left her alive and most likely thought she was dead anyway, so I'm curious to see what Negan does. I mean, he might take an interest in it. It's like, whoa, you were one badass surviving that entire situation. I heard what happened. Obviously, going to try to explain it, be like, that was Simon, that wasn't me. So we'll see if that really works out for him in the next episode or not. But still. But we'll just kind of have to wait till the next episode to see how everything plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good